All right. Hello, everybody. Today, I wanted to do a little video, very opinionated video, talking about one of my favorite video game series, the Hitman World of Assassination trilogy. I've been playing these games since they came out, and today I wanted to sit down with some of these maps and give my 100% subjective rating of what I think are the best and the worst maps in the entire Hitman trilogy. So I want to begin with this bottom tier, which really should be like non-qualifying um, maps. These are the maps that are simply, too small or just don't have enough content to really compare to the rest of the maps. And that would be Carpathian Mountains, Freeform Training, Final Test, and I'm putting Hawke's Bay in there. Now, this is ordered, um, by the way. So this is the worst on the right, the best on the left. And the way I look at these maps is they're not bad by any means. They're, still well thought out levels with a lot of great moments in them. But they simply do not have the scale of or sandbox creativity that the rest of the maps do. I guess the most, you know, credit I can give these maps is the final test, which I actually think I'm going to move higher than Hawke's Bay because I really like the final test because it really is the player's first introduction to a true sandbox style, you know, fortress in Hitman. It's a really good introduction to kind of throw the player in the deep end and say this is kind of the formula for what the rest of the game is going to be about. I really like that. Looking at these a little more individually, starting with Carpathian Mountains, I have this at the very bottom just because it is follows such a different formula than the rest of the maps. It is 100% linear, right? Every playthrough you do is going to be relatively the same, unless you're going for like challenges like Silent Assassin, suit only, all that stuff, Sniper Assassin. But that's actually something I want to give it credit for. The Silent Assassin suit only on Carpathian Mountains is honestly one of my favorite, crazy to say, favorite Silent Assassin suit only um, maps to run that challenge on. Just because it is so linear, but it's also very difficult, but very thrilling and exciting once you do manage to figure out how to get past all these guards without being seen, do it correctly, and all that fun stuff and get to the end. I think it's a very satisfying map to complete that way in a challenge. As, but just as like, looking at it from like the Hitman formula, it's just not there because it is so linear. And I get they had to do that with the story and everything. So it's really no fault to the map. It's just so different from the rest of the formula that I have to rank it at the very bottom. Then we have freeform training, very basic. The first map that you're introduced to in this entire series. Very guided again, but also gives you that free form training, right? The free form approach to the map. It kind of introduces you to that before then testing in the final test. So I really do like that. It kind of lays the groundwork, but again, it's just very small. There's not a lot of opportunity, not a lot of things to do. It kind of plays quite linear in most aspects. Um, Definitely not as much as Carpathian Mountains, but just most playthroughs I find myself doing the same things because it is, in the end, trying to guide you on how to play this game, what the mechanics are and such. And then Hawke's Bay. Now, for a very long time, Hawke's Bay was one of my favorite maps. But the more and more I play it, the more I realize that it is literally one building in the middle of nowhere, right? There's really not a lot to this map. I like the concept of going into a place, doing an objective, and then your target comes to you and you have to try to kill them and escape. I like that. What I don't like is getting there, walking 3 minutes up to the house, having to hide, do all that stuff. I like the killing stuff. I like all that. I like the actual mission. But then I don't like having to leave and walk through all the grass. I get it's there to kind of, this is a new hiding mechanic we're introducing, but it's just not engaging. And again, it kind of plays very linearly, similar to the freeform training, not so much as compared to the mountains again, just because you're kind of doing the same thing. You're approaching it from the boat, you're doing your stuff, and you're leaving from the boat. It's like kind of one line you have to take, as opposed to the final test, which is really the first true, playground map in Hitman. Um, and I love it for that. It has a very memorable mission story with, um, rigging the ejector seat, and getting that to blow up your target. That I think is exceptional for introducing players to the idea of mission stories and things like that. But again, it's just, they gotta go on the bottom because it is simply not to scale as the rest of the maps. It is very small, very confined. It's very good, but does not take a long time to really get the full experience of that map, as opposed to all of the rest of them, um, which we're going to get into now. What I think the first, kind of, I really don't like using the word like, saying they're bad Hitman maps, but they're just like less good maps. Um, very bottom, very bottom of D, I'm putting Bangkok. Now, Bangkok, it's just when I think of Bangkok, I feel nothing. I look at this and I think of nothing. Like it's nothing here really sticks out aside from one of the targets, that being Jordan Cross. Cool, musician, rock musician. He has a cool backstory of like killing his girlfriend and his girlfriend's parents. Put a hit on him because of that, because they learned what happened, right? He's a blah blah blah. I like, like the 27 Club, stuff like that. It's very interesting. But it's just so like the layout of the map just being two mirrored sides of the same thing doesn't really do it for me. It feels like it's just very, it doesn't have that playground aspect that I love to see in Hitman maps. It's very like I don't even know how to describe it. I just feel nothing playing this map. Right? I'm gonna just leave it at that. It's my opinion. I just Bangkok is the map that I want to go back to the least because it is, in my opinion, the least interesting. Right? Even visually, like it's just it looked really good at one point, and then they changed the lighting, and that kind of messed everything up. But anyway, next I'm going to put, what everyone's least favorite map probably is. That is Colorado. Um, I'm a little bit of a Colorado defender. Not that much, of course, as it is, technically second from the bottom, as I'm not really ranking these four, as they're just, it's impossible to compare to the rest of them. But Colorado is a very difficult map, and that is why a lot of people don't like that. But I want to kind of make the connection correlation that difficulty does not exactly make something bad, right? And I think we'll see that later in my list that some of the harder maps I really really enjoy. But just looking at Colorado, Colorado is just so arbitrarily difficult. Um, and it's not just in its uh, objectives and stuff like that. Having four targets with, what is it? Sean Rose is the only one I remember the name of. But it's like it's so unnecessarily hostile to the player that it really limits the core concept of freedom of approach that the prior maps have really set up for the player. And then you go Bangkok and Colorado back to back. Bangkok definitely had, I think, more of that freedom of approach aspect. It was just so unforgettable for me. Whereas Colorado is definitely, I wouldn't call it unforgettable. I just think it is arbitrarily unnecessary, right? It is a map that I think, when I think of this map, I think, okay, I'm going to be doing a lot of hiding behind boxes. I'm going to be doing a lot of sneaking around. And it's when you're introduced to the start of the game with a map like Paris, where the core concept is you have to get disguises and work your way up from the lowest disguise to the highest disguise, maybe even getting the skeleton key disguise of Helmut Kruger, right? That's very integral to the Hitman identity. And then when you're thrown into a map like Colorado, where if you don't get a disguise by like the very start of the game, you're dead the second you get seen because everything is hostile. It's just unnecessarily difficult. And I think they were kind of doing that because they were ramping up towards the end of the first chapter. But it's like you don't need to do that, right? Like Hokkaido, the last map, is challenging enough, and it does difficulty so much better, in my opinion. Um, Whereas Colorado kind of just says, "Oh, the first few maps were a little easy." Um, Kind of want to, it feels like it's difficult just to kind of extend the runtime of Hitman 1, and that's less fun, I think. Anyway, enough about Colorado. Next, we are going to get into the one and only, probably the most forgettable map, that is Ambrose Island. It is going up a tier, however, because I do not dislike Ambrose Island. Like, I'm not, when I'm playing Freelancer, for example, if I see Ambrose Island, I'm not like, oh, I'm never going to go there. No, like, I like going to Ambrose Island. The thing I don't like about Ambrose Island is that there's no, um, you know, guided mission statements. Um, and that's not like there are still, mission stories and stuff like that, mission statement stories. There are still these guided, quests that you can go on to, but they're hidden. And one of the things I love to do in Hitman games is I boot up a map, I play it once by myself, and then I go back with all the mission um, objectives on, and I see, all the inner workings of the map, all the different stories, and all the different ways to play that kind of are pre-programmed into the game. And the fact that I had to, I don't know, I guess it's not really a bad thing. It just kind of rubbed me the wrong way that I had to kind of go out of my way to figure out what the game has told me for how to do for the rest of the entire series, right? And but the map itself, I don't hate the map itself. It is kind of small, I think. Which I've heard a lot of people say it's a really big map. I don't think so. Like it is quite small. It's literally just, I think of it kind of like a very small and condensed Miami, which isn't necessarily the best way to think about it. But that's just where my brain goes to because in the middle, similar to like the racetrack cutting the map in half, in the middle you have the main strip of houses and like the bar and that main road leading from beach to beach. And then on one side you have pirates and their camp and the lady target who I can't remember her name of, like Akka, I think it was. And then on the other side you have the ruins and all that stuff. But another reason I don't like this map is that third objective, having to get rid of the case file, or I don't even remember what it is. Is it a case file? I don't know, like a satellite unit. It's just like, why do I have to take out my targets and then go out of my way to go into this dark cave on the other side of the map and do that? Like, I don't know. It's unnecessary. Again, it's a cool map in concept, but execution, it's just so dark and sad, right? But like my favorite part of this map is that middle strip area of houses and stuff. But it's such a small part of the map that it just doesn't really do it for me. Anyway, I'm gonna move on a little quicker now. Haven Island is next. Haven is beautiful. It's a beautiful map. It has a great, vibe and aesthetic too. Um, like when I boot up Haven, I always think, wow, this is really interesting and really cool. And then I start playing it and I'm like, oh, I'm playing Haven Island. Uh, my biggest complaint about Haven Island is why does Stephen Bradley exist? Like, I just feel like removing one of the targets, specifically Stephen Bradley, would make this map so much more interesting because you have the very beginning of the game, you're introduced. You start up the map, you get your key and everything. You're introduced to one of the targets, Vetrova, Miss Vetrova, and she's right there. She's front and center. She's like, "Oh, hey, what's up?" It's really obvious mission story for you to take. Right there, you call her, get her in the spa, um, knock her off there. And then there's the hidden mansion where it's Tyson Williams. That's where he is, and he's like, the old guy. He's sick. He can be like a doctor and sneak up on him and all that stuff. And then in the middle there, you have Stephen Bradley, who kind of just exists for the sake of having a third target. And I don't really like that. Another thing that I don't love about Haven Island is how open it is. Now, it's not always a bad thing, but with a map like this, the NPCs, they just, the skies are so clear they can see a mile down the road. And it is very, very frustrating. Um, it's just like it's not a map that I think of and I'm like, oh, I want to go play Haven Island. Like it's a map that I think of aesthetically as being really cool. Like, oh, I'm on a resort. But the more I play it and the more I think about it, it's just like it could have been so much better, especially with what I think one of the most underutilized locations in all of Hitman is the underground laboratory in Haven Island, which I didn't even know existed for my first like three playthroughs of this map because it's just so out of nowhere. Like it's so like tucked away, and you really have to go out of your way to find it. And I'm sure there's might be a mission story connected to it, but again, a lot of the mission stories on this map they do a weird thing that most other mission stories in the game don't, is where they set you up, but then they set you up in a way where you had to have already planned beforehand. Um, and it's like, well, if I if I was told that this is the outcome of that was gonna be, I would have planned for something differently. I would have done something before I got my target in this position. Like I would have poisoned something before they got there. But that's just it doesn't give you that opportunity, which I feel like a lot of other mission stories did give you that opportunity. And so I like that in a way, but I also don't like that I have to kind of play them all the mission stories twice. One to kind of learn what happens and where that gets my target to move, and the other one to actually set my trap beforehand and then get my target in that position and do what I want to do with that. I don't know, it's just it feels kind of half put together. Um, but still, I love the vibe of it. I love Hitman on a beach, and yeah, I think that's cool. Anyway, next up, this one might be a little controversial, but I'm not sure. I'm going to put Chungking right here. Um, yeah, this map. I'm probably butchered the name, but it doesn't really matter. So this map, a lot of times when people talk about this map, they talk about how cool it is aesthetically, which is easily the best part of the map. This is one of, if not the best looking map, I think, in the entire series. I love just walking down that main street and seeing all those neon lights, walking up those stairs, all that wonderful stuff. And then I look at my objectives and I have to take out Hush and Imogen Royce. And I think to myself, I don't want to do that. And most of the time I go into this map, I just go in, I walk around, I maybe visit the underground facility, and then I leave. Because this map, especially with Hush, I don't like I think the most engaging part of this map, which is also very controversial, is the underground facility. I love the underground facility with Imogen Royce down there. It's so cool. It's like a little map within a map, and it's really neat. Um, and I feel like that level design of that underground fortress basically is really cool and really well done. Whereas actually exploring like the streets and all the other stuff, it's kind of like Mumbai in a way that it's confusing, but you know, kind of intended to be so. Yet it's also arbitrarily difficult having to work your way up the tower of the like apartment building that Hush is in with all his research. I will say that this is one of the better maps in terms of like world building and storytelling, where you see that Hush is getting poor people off the streets to do his horrible experiments on, and it's really cool like that. But it's just not that interesting um, of like a gameplay for me. And for that reason, I can't put it any higher than right here, unfortunately. Um, but again, I want to preface that I don't 100% hate any of these maps. Like, I like all of these maps, just I like some more than others. Uh, Next up, one map that I like, or the one map above that I like more than Chungking, is Marrakesh. Um, Marrakesh. I've heard a lot of people say Marrakesh is their favorite, and a lot of people say Marrakesh is their least favorite. Mostly least favorite, because Marrakesh is you have the embassy, consulate, whatever it is, and then you have the school. They are on completely opposite sides of the maps. Two complete fortresses, very hard to get into, especially the school, is very difficult to get into and take out your target over there. Um, Radon, I think is his name. I don't actually know who the targets are. Um, but and there's a big old empty area in the middle. Zedon, that's the name. Raises Zedon. Um, they have the big open map in the middle, and I really like the concept of having kind of two maps in one. Right? They're so separate. There are ways to get them together, but I love the idea and the concept of having two completely separate levels essentially within the same mission, within the same map. Very different vibes, very different levels of difficulty with the consulate and the school. And I think it could have been so much better if they just weren't so far apart. I kind of dread having to walk between in the middle of that whole square. I think it's a very beautifully, well done central area with huge crowds and all that really cool stuff, and has that club area in the middle or whatever you call that, like that party area. It's really cool. But again, it's just like this big roadblock in the way of making it even just that much more. Why does it need to be there? You know. But still, I really like it. Gameplay wise, I do think it works a lot better than Chongqing in terms of, Chongqing is kind of the same thing. We have the two separate areas, whereas the way Chongqing is, one area is really, really good, one area is kind of bad, I would say. Like, I really like the lab. I don't really like the apartment buildings where Hush is. And then with Marrakesh, both of them are kind of just fine for me. So really, these kind of are interchangeable with like the gameplay wise, but I am going to give the edge to Marrakesh. Oops, Marrakesh, just because of partially nostalgia. Right, it was in the first game. I played that game, over and over again. I have many more hours in Marrakesh than I do Chunking, but also just it's so much more rewarding to get around, um, and I really like that about it. Anyway, that is actually going to wrap up our C tier. So now we're going to get into the B tier with a map that is actually used to be a lot of people's favorites. I think it might be falling off a little bit now, but I'm not really sure. And that is going to be Dartmoor, sitting at the bottom of B tier. Now, Dartmoor, um, you know, elephant in the room, really amazing, super cool, awesome detective mission story. That is easily one of the best and most iconic, kind of guided missions or, ways to play. What are they called? Mission stories, yeah. One of the easily most iconic mission stories in the entire series. It is so good, so well done. It's excellent. You get, there's one target, which might be like the only map ever to have one target, which is kind of crazy. Unless Hawke's Bay has a target, has only one target, but I think you have to kill both of them. Um, that maybe just one target, but Dartmoor is just so simple and it's so, friendly. As the second map of Hitman 3, it's not, pushing you right off the deep end. Um, it will definitely afterwards with Berlin. That's a very difficult one. But it's, it's very welcoming and it's so rewarding to look around the map and play a completely different play style than you're used to throughout the entire series. But at the end of the day, that's really it. Like that is Dartmoor. Dartmoor is that murder mystery. The rest of it is basically smaller, less interesting Paris, in my opinion. Right? Like it's literally an English house in the middle of nowhere. Literally the middle of nowhere in like swampland. And it's there's just not much else other than that thing. And so I can't push myself to rank it any higher because of that, which is a shame because I really like it. But there's only one thing I really like about it, and it's really, really good. It's just not enough to really stand out. Next, we are going to put, I might change this actually. Yeah, we're going Mumbai next. Okay, this is different from my plan I had, but making a game time decision here. Mumbai is one of the most frustratingly rewarding maps in the game, in the entire series. Because on one hand, a new player walks into Mumbai and they absolutely hate it, right? It's a horribly confusing, like labyrinth-esque maze you have to traverse. And on top of that, you have two targets that are across the map from each other in two separate fortresses, the train yard and the construction building. And then you also have to find a target that's not marked in the slums while hiding from, enforcers and all that stuff. It is, in my opinion, challenge done right. Whereas Colorado was, as I said earlier, challenge done wrong. Mumbai is I think one of the most well designed maps in the entire series. Um, because if you don't know anything about Mumbai, you're gonna have a bad time. But the more you play Mumbai, the more you see just how rewarding of an experience it can be to fully play and fully understand. And once you really understand Mumbai, it is such a great map. But the fact that you need to put in all those hours and it does have that kind of, you know, skill ceiling you got to get to really enjoy and appreciate it, I got to put it right here just above Dartmoor because at the end of the day, the train yard is not that interesting. I do actually like the construction building because a lot of people are like intimidated by it. I think it's actually one of the easier parts of the map. I think the construction building is, I think, the easiest part of Mumbai to kind of traverse and understand, whereas the slums and the train yard are very difficult. Um, but it gives you that sense of once you understand because of how confusing Mumbai is. Once you understand it, it's so rewarding, and that's why I have to put it up here at B just above Dartmoor. Um, and yeah, Mumbai goes here. Anyway, next up we have Isle of Scale. Once again, a very difficult map, but it is one of, if not definitely top three coolest settings, I think, for a Hitman map. Right? This isolated castle on the middle of an island. It is so cool. It is so difficult, but it is also one of the most frustrating maps because it is difficult. Um, right? The two targets are incredibly difficult to isolate without using mission stories and all that stuff. The silent assassin suit only method that I found was horribly, horribly difficult. It took way too long to do, especially on master, and I never want to do that again. There's just so many guards. Everyone on this Illuminati island is out to get you. Um, but again, that feeling of scaling the side of the castle, getting up to that penthouse, it's just so cool and so rewarding. And what I love about Scale is that there's so many cool like Easter eggs and side things to do. Like you can get like the knight um, armor and the broadsword and go around killing everyone, standing hiding on the plinths that are on the map. And it's just these little details that make me love Scale so much, even though it is very difficult and kind of unnecessarily so. And one thing I have to say, talk about Scale, is its third objective of protecting the constant. Um, no one is trying to kill the constant, as far as I can remember. Maybe there's, some mission story where one of the Washingtons try to kill the constant, but really, the constant can only die if Agent 47, presses the kill switch, which I'm sure everyone has done once on this map. Um, it's just like, why does that need to be an objective? I get it's, you gotta like, kind of um, take him back home with you, right? You gotta kidnap him or do whatever you want to do, gotta do with him. I don't know exactly the full story behind that, but it's just like you don't need that. Kind of the same thing with Mendoza, which I get to later, but that's done a little better because it's not just a kill switch in your hand. Anyway, scale is awesome. Very, very cool and rewarding to learn and run around, but also very difficult and very, some of the mission stories are kind of lame, honestly. Um, and a lot of the ways to kill them is kind of lame. But yeah, that is my thoughts on scale. Next up, we have the one, the only Dubai. Going in B. Dubai is fantastic. It's fantastic. But Dubai, the more I play Dubai, the more I think I don't want to play Dubai anymore because it's very beautiful to look at. It does a great job as being the, introduction, the tutorial to Hitman 3, but it also is like there's like a feeling you get playing it where it's kind of like, okay, I've done this before, right? I don't really know how to describe it, honestly, but I really wish I had, more of this thought out. Dubai just doesn't really give me that feeling that, oh, I want to go back and play Dubai again. You know, like you play it once, you kill Ingram and Stuyvesant, and the thing you remember about Dubai is the location. Is well, I'm on top of the Burj Khalifa, and it's the tallest building in the world. Like the mission is literally called "On Top of the World," but actually playing Dubai is not that exciting. I don't think for me. Of course, it's obviously good enough for me to put it above all these other maps, because it does such a good job of being this introduction map for Hitman 3, and introduce the camera, which kind of unnecessary. That's whatever. It still can be fun, but it doesn't have that rewarding aspect to it that I really like from a lot of maps. Um, that's really all I have to say about Dubai. There's some cool mission stories of like doing the parachutes and stuff. I like the exploding golf ball one. That's pretty cool. But again, it's just like it seems so basic. And maybe that can be a good thing sometimes, but for Dubai, it's kind of forgettable for me. That's just how I look at it. Again, it's my opinion. I can rank them wherever I want. Next up, we have Berlin, very tippy top of B tier, rounding it out. This completes the B tier. Now, Berlin, the very first time I played Berlin, I despised it. I was so mad that I had to go around and find my targets, and the mission took me like an hour and a half to beat because I couldn't find some of the targets, some of the ICA agents, and it really frustrated me, and I didn't like it. I didn't like having no mission statements. I didn't like, you know, being guided or handheld. But playing Berlin taught me a very valuable lesson on the concept of freedom of approach, which is, I believe, the foundation of what the Hitman trilogy is formed upon. And Berlin, more than any of the tutorial missions like Final Test or Freeform training, does is Berlin really is like, okay, you're on this map. You have to find the targets. You have to find your own way to kill them. You can be stealthy about it. You can do, you can go in guns blazing. You can do all that stuff, but it's up to you to figure out what to do. And playing Berlin more than just the first time being really frustrated going back to it, it is a great map. I love the concept of searching for the ICA agents to take out, having 10 targets around the map. Of course, you obviously only need to kill 5 of them, but still, that idea that there's 10 people out there that you're hunting down. You are the apex predator, as is the name of the mission. And the thing, the only reason Berlin isn't any higher for me is because I don't think the map itself is that interesting. It is very gray, very dark. Even inside the nightclub, it doesn't do it for me. It's not like that exciting. Like I don't that vibe just doesn't hit well with me. It's just like okay, it's just a rave. Like it's not like it doesn't really get me excited being inside like this German club. Um, so I feel like if you take that concept of being this apex predator hunting down your targets and trying to find them one by one and putting it in a better setting, um, I think the map is very well designed. Like it has a lot of, good little shortcuts and nooks and crannies to go and, hide in and climb up and jump over and all that stuff. But it's just the core concept of the map being this hidden nightclub does not do it for me. And that is why I have to keep it in B tier, as much as I love the gameplay. Next up, rounding the bottom of A tier, we have Mendoza, the, I think, true finale, gameplay wise at least, of Hitman 3. And it is very good. Um, it is, I love the concept of the map. It goes right back to Hitman's roots in Paris, where there's this big party you attend. I like the idea that Diana is there in the map with you. Again, I do think it's a little weird that one of your objectives is to make sure Diana doesn't die. When at least this time there is, I know for a fact that there is a mission story that can get Diana in danger. So that kind of makes a little more sense. And there's no just like, kill switch that you have in your hand to kill Diana, which didn't really make any much sense with constant and everything. But again, like Mendoza is just such a well-designed map. It has these distinct areas. It has a very distinct hierarchy of outfits, working your way, down into the depths of the winery and the dungeons and all that, or up to the top of the mansion and the house up on the hill. Um, you know, in the party as like the waiter and all that stuff. And it's just like down at the like Gestapos, whatever they are, the guards down in the by the boathouse and all that stuff. There's so much stuff in this map that makes it so interesting, but it's not overwhelming. And that's what I think I really like about it. Um, it's interesting and not overwhelming. The only thing I will knock it is the targets are not that interesting. Uh, the targets being, I don't even remember who they are. Um, exactly. It's not like there's the lady in the blue dress and Don Yates, right? Isn't that his name? I don't know. But it's like the level design is incredibly good. The mission design of like who your targets are and all that stuff could be better. Mission stories are really interesting. Some of them are really interesting, not all of them. Some of them are really interesting, like getting into the meeting with one of your targets in like that dungeon area. That's really cool and interesting. Um, I like the Grape Crusher. Everyone likes the Grape Crusher. Crushing everyone with the grape. I think that's like just a fun. It really leans into kind of the comedic side of Hitman, and I really like that. Anyway, that's really all I have to say about Mendoza. It again is one of the maps that I haven't really played that much. Hitman 3 is definitely my least played game. So I don't really have that much to say about all of them, but that is Mendoza for you. And a lot of you are probably looking at this and wondering why is Santa Fortuna not on the map yet, on the list yet? That is because it goes in A tier. Because I think, the biggest Santa Fortuna defender of all time. Once again, kind of like I was talking about Marrakesh, I love the idea of having two separate maps essentially in one map, like one location. And Santa Fortuna takes that idea and says, okay, but what if we do three? Santa Fortuna is by far the biggest, I think the biggest. Maybe Miami's bigger. Um, definitely one of the biggest maps. It takes a long time to traverse from point A to point B, but I love it. It is so fun for me to get to travel to the mansion and the construction site, and then down to the fields where Franco is, and then go over to the city where the house where whatever her name is, Martinez, Andrea Martinez. Like I love this idea of having kind of like this little world contained in this map where there's multiple different parts. One is like a super difficult fortress, one is like a worker field, one is, kind of just free essentially because you can get Andrea out of the house so many ways. And then I like the construction site there. I love the world building with like the secret tunnels, the secret like Indiana Jones like puzzle wall thing that they have to get the sacrificial dagger. The shaman area is really cool, kind of off to the side. it's so well built and well designed. This is obviously very biased, me speaking, in my experiences at Santa Fortuna. I've never really had a bad time on Santa Fortuna. Like, yes, it can be frustrating going from map to map, or like going from one side of the map to the other side of the map to get to different targets. But it's just like I love it so much, and the mission stories again are really cool. With like the tattoo one to get inside the mansion, or you can do the musician one where it's like the Blues Brothers got to get all the musicians together, put on a little thing. It's so cool, so many cool opportunities, and I love it, and it's super cool, and it goes in A tier. And right above Santa Fortuna, I am going to put New York. New York, the bank. This is just a great map all around. What I love about New York is how small it is. New York is one of the smallest maps. Might be the smallest map, aside from the these ones down here, of course. But what New York does, um, it's so good. It has one target, right? Which, every I think every way to kill the target ultimately ends up, for the most part, in you climbing up, the social ladder, essentially going up to her executive suite in her office. And I love that concept for a bank map. And on top of that, add in the heist aspect. I'm an absolute sucker for heist movies and heist things. And I love the way they did it in this, where you can choose to go break into the vault and steal the data core, or you can go in and knock out the three people with the disk data drives and do it that way. And one of them happens to be your target too, so you're kind of knocking out two birds with one stone there. And it's just such a well designed level. There's really I don't have that many negatives about it. The only negative I'd have is that I wish there was more, right? And I'm glazing this map like it is an S tier map, which I don't quite think it is, because again, it's very small, it's very limited in the way you play, but the ways you play are really cool, right? It is at the end a Hitman map where it's kind of a sandbox, but at the end of the day, the sandbox, it all kind of leads to one place, right? Almost every game, I find myself opening the vault, right? And then I always find myself climbing up to the top of the executive suite, her office, all that stuff. It's a very kind of directed map, which I think works very well thematically. But I just wish there was more of it. That's, I guess, my complaint. And next up, rounding out the A tier. To be top of A tier, I have not Whittleton Creek. I have Sapienza. Sapienza goes to the top of A tier because I wanted to put it here. I love Sapienza. Sapienza, I think it is the best designed, like structurally, maps in the entire series. I genuinely do. However, I never actually go and I get very frustrated with Sapienza because it has this huge map that's very detailed, very interesting, yet the entire mission takes place in um, the mansion. And I feel like that is a disservice to the concept of Sapienza, right? The entire thing, you have both Silvio and Francesca in that main mansion, which is a large part of the map, but it's really barely half the map. Because on the other side, you have the church and the clock tower and all the streets and the piers and the docks and the underground sewers and all this rest of the map that really the casual player will only see if they're going out seeking other mission stories, which most of them do, but it's very one-time thing. For the most part, you're just breaking into the house, going underneath the house for the virus, and escaping. The virus is another thing I don't like about Sapiens. A lot of people don't like the virus. I think the virus as a concept, having a third objective to do, is cool. But as this was, their first attempt at it, it could have been a lot better. Um, so yeah, Sapienza, amazing map. It just the actual mission that it is could have been a lot more. But yeah, that's where I'm putting it. Next up, the S tier. You can already see the four S tiers um, I'm going to put, and that is going to be Paris, Hokkaido, Miami, and Whittleton Creek. However, this is not the order that I'm putting them in, and I think this order might shock you. This is the order that I am putting them in: Miami, Paris, Hokkaido, Whittleton Creek. And I'm going to go through this one by one and hopefully try to explain myself why I think Whittleton Creek is my favorite map in the entire Hitman series. Now, Miami, absolute classic. First map of Hitman 2. It is so incredibly ambitious, and the concept of placing the player at this racing event and letting them explore all the areas that you don't normally see in video games at a racing event like this. Like, normally you'd be on the track driving because that's like the fun part. But in a game like this, getting to explore and all that other stuff around it is so incredibly cool. It's so cool. And on top of that, the targets are two of the most iconic targets in the entire series: Robert and Sierra Knox, right? The race car driver and the Robotech billionaire guy. It's so cool. It is incredibly well designed. I really have no complaints with it. These top four, I genuinely have no complaints at all. Um, Miami is so incredibly well done. The mission stories are some of the best in the entire game. It's so well done. So good. I have nothing but praise for Miami. That's really all that needs to be said. Um, Harris is absolutely iconic. The second I think of Hitman, the very first map I think of is Paris. Paris with the big old Helmut Kruger banner hanging down the side of it. Paris to me is the absolute pinnacle of puzzle box layout, right? You're placed on the outside of this big box, right? The big mansion, the Paris um, gala. And your job is to work your way from the bottom to the top to get up to the auction where one of your targets is. And it is the map layout and design for the first real map in the Hitman series. IO absolutely knocked it out of the park. And the mission, how it's played with Victor Novikov and Dalia Margolis. Victor really being like a roamer, right? He kind of walks around the lower floors of the party and all that stuff. And Dahlia is up on the top, right? So you have these two opposing targets, one on the bottom, one on the top. One is very literally presented to you front and center. The other one is really hidden up in the auction. You kind of got to work and find your way to get up there. The way you traverse Paris is so intricate and so well done, and the place just feels so real. Like this, maybe it is based off of a real building. I don't know, but this could very well be a real building that exists because it just makes sense. The layout of Paris just makes sense, and it's amazing that way. Um, I have no place for Paris. A lot of people don't like Paris because it is so basic, but I think that it's a necessity for being the very first game, like very first game, very first map in that very first game. It's so good. I love Paris. Maybe it's nostalgia talking, but I don't really have to defend myself. It's my list. I can do what I want. Hokkaido is my number two because Hokkaido showed me that a difficult map does not need to be a bad map. Hokkaido is incredibly difficult, and starting the player with no loadout until they reach mastery level 20 is absolutely insane, and that should never have been a thing, but I'm so glad that it was because it allows the player to really learn this map and really understand what this map can be um, at its core, being this totally restricting, and like this whole map is kind of out to get you, but in a way that's so much more engaging and interesting than Colorado, where literally just everyone's trying to shoot at you. This map, it's like there's no like keys. You have like the RFID chip suit system to unlock the doors, which leads to a lot of really interesting ways that you can kind of scale around this really exciting and unique setting of this remote private hospital in the mountains of Hokkaido. It's so cool. There's some incredible Easter eggs on this map. from, the volcano erupting. There's a Godzilla Easter egg, I think. It's like Dance Dance Revolution in the down in the bottom, and it's just like you play Minesweeper, right? And even the concept of having your targets of Yuki Yamazaki and what's his name, Eric Soders. Eric Soders being a completely stationary target is so incredibly cool to me. Like the idea that he's just sitting there waiting for you to get there is so cool. And that one, um, I think it might be a mission story, it might not be, but that one thing you can do where you just walk up to him when no one's looking and you like, kind of talk to him and he's like, oh shit, like it's like so real and visceral, and you can kill him just like right there by snapping his neck while he's on the operating table. It's so cool. I love this map. The setting is absolutely amazing. Nothing but praise. Everyone hates it because it's very difficult. Nah, I love it. It's so good. And finally, probably the most controversial thing on this list, Whittleton Creek. Um, I'm gonna tell you a little story about Whittleton Creek and why it is the best, in my opinion, the best map. There is in one of the houses, a old lady. She bakes the cupcakes. And she bakes the cupcakes and she's all happy. She has all these workers that's really happy, and she sells the cupcakes at the party and outside of the party in her little truck, and it's really awesome. And then you go into her house where she's baking the cupcakes, and you go into the basement and you see that she is a psychopathic serial murderer who, poisons all of the, uh, you know, muffins and cookies and biscuits and stuff that she makes. And she uses it to study the residents of Whittleton Creek and learn about their DNA and all the sicknesses and weaknesses they have to create perfect, most exquisite cupcakes and muffins of all time. And it is diabolically sinister. It is so incredibly cool. And the best part is, it is just an arbitrary NPC that is not one of your targets. It is just completely, half the people that play this game don't even know about this. And I love that. Whittleton Creek, I think, has the best, which is completely biased. I just love this map. I think it has the best environment environmental storytelling of any map in the series. Um, there's really like there's all these houses that you can go into. There's a party in the background. The setting is so cool, and like bringing this agent of death into a normal suburban neighborhood is so cool. There's two really cool targets. You've been hyping up this one target, Janice, for the better part of the entire game, really. Being this, elusive ultra killer who's, so infamous. He's ruled the world from the shadows for years, and then you find him and he's a frail old man. And there's something very, bittersweet about seeing that, about seeing this guy who just wants to sit in his backyard and make sure there's no groundhogs in his garden, right? But he's this, evil mastermind, or he was at one point, but now he's, bedridden and sick, and he just wants a pack of cigarettes. And it's so fascinating and detailed, and everyone hates on it because it's not the most engaging gameplay wise, but that's not everything that I like to look for in a map. And Whittleton Creek, I think, just shines for me. Every time I think about it, I'm like, wow, this is just an amazing piece of art, as is what Whittleton Creek is, in my opinion. Now, of course, I have to address the fact that the actual campaign mission is anything but perfect, right? Of course, there are biases in my list, so it might not be perfect, but I'm ranking it at the top because I love it. The fact that you have to find the clues, um, let me just say this. I have only actually beaten Whittleton Creek one time. And that is the very first time I played it. I killed Janus, I killed Nolan Cassidy, and I found the three clues and I left. Every other time I played it, I've killed Janus, whatever his name is, Nolan killed Nolan Cassidy, and then I have exited the map because I cannot be bothered to find three clues over and over again for no reason. It's just a waste of my time. And that is the worst thing about Middleton Creek. It really is. Everything else I absolutely love. All the different houses you can go into, all the different styles of houses. They are all essentially they are the same exact thing over and over again, the same blueprint. But the way they're designed with the different personalities of the homeowners and all that other stuff, it's so interesting and so engaging. And it's not so expansive and, intimidating. It's a map you can just kind of step into and say, here I am in this little neighborhood. It's not horribly huge and ambitious. It's something that's palatable. It's something that you can just walk around and get in, in like an hour or less even to really understand and be like, this is a very well thought out, well, designed gameplay experience. And I love it. Anyway, that's that. That's my list. You can agree or you can disagree. It does not matter. Yeah, this has gone on way too long, but I don't really care. Bye.